So your next test, this is a typical easy question. Now, we're not going to actually do this one because it's one of your homework problems, and we'll do those together in a minute. But they're fraction functions, so let's write one down. X plus 5 over x minus 4. This is about as simple as they could get. And instead of saying like y equals, we say it's like, well, less than or equal to 0. If you paid attention yesterday, you'd know that I care about what makes the top 0, I care about what makes the bottom 0, and you put it on a number line, and then you figure out if those spots work, and then you test around them with intervals. I think you can do this one, so I'm just going to be quiet and have you try this. As long as you watched yesterday's video, if you were sick too, you should be able to do it. Okay, Brody, what makes the top 0? Negative 5. So negative 5 is important, and I put it on the number line. And I circle it. You always circle it. The question is if you fill it in. Jack, do you fill it in or not?
Yeah.
Because this makes it equal 0. If the top is 0, the whole thing is 0. That's important to understand. Unless the bottom is also 0, but if the top is 0, it equals 0 unless the whole function dies. When I put in negative 5 here and here, I get 0 on top divided by negative 9, which is 0. So it works. Meaning I fill it in because it says or equal right there. All right, now the other important spot is 4. Bridger, why is that an important spot? So when I put in a 4, what happens again? You said cancels out. I don't think that's what you really mean. When I put in a 4, what happens? What does the bottom turn into?
0.
Yeah, and can you divide by 0? No. So I'm going to leave that one empty. Some people think that whenever there's an or equal to sign, you just fill in all the circles. Not true. This 4 makes the function die. When you divide by 0, it doesn't exist anymore. So that is what's called an undefined place. I put a little u above it for undefined because that's different than the top kind, where if it's the top number, the negative 5, it makes it equal 0. Okay, now we have to test intervals like you have to test 5, you have to test 0, or something else that's in between these two, and you have to test like negative 6. Raise your hand if you are done. That's less than half of you. I'm going to pause for a second, test those 3 intervals, and be confident where it works and where it doesn't. And when I say works, I'm looking for less than 0. Or, I guess, equal to 0. Okay, Dice of Destiny. Who should I call upon? Effie. It's you. Can you tell me what number you want to test?
5.
Okay, we'll test 5. So I'm going to go put a 5 here and here. And on the top, I know it's 10, but I'm just going to say positive. And I know that this is 1, but I'm just going to say positive. Because we're always comparing to 0, all we care is that it came out positive divided by positive, which is positive. But is a positive less than 0? No. So then it did not work. It came out to be a positive number. If I wanted to be specific, it came out to 10 over 1, which is 10. And is 10 less than 0? No, it's not. So it didn't work. Now, I'm going to put in 0 next. Noah, would you tell me what happens when I put in 0 here and here? Do I get a positive number and a negative, or like a negative and a negative, or what is it? Positive over negative. So that means the whole function comes out what? Negative. Is that less than 0? Yes, so it worked in there. And last but not least, Brody, can you tell me how to put in negative 6? I put it here, I put it here, and what kind of answers does it give me? Negative and negative, or? Negative and negative. So then, the whole function overall is positive. Are positives going to satisfy this? No. It does not work. There's your final answer. Add these together. I'm going to pause for a second. Common denominators, you got to know how to do it. Okay, I totally get it. It's like been a while since we've done this, and tons of kids last hour were not sure how to get common denominators. You multiply by the other denominator. Now, technically, I'm supposed to multiply by 1 over 1, but do you get, it doesn't really do anything over there. So, like, I don't really have to multiply by 1 over 1. But then I've multiplied by the other denominator. The final answer is what? Well, again, a lot of people get confused on what you're supposed to do here. If you had 1 over 2 plus 3 over 2, you would add the tops but leave the bottom the same. Get what I mean? You'd leave the bottom the same. So you don't like add the x and the x on the bottom here. You just have a common denominator of x. And on the top, you add the tops. So 2x plus 1 is 2x plus 1. Some people want to cancel that. You can't, because this is part of an add problem. You cannot cancel those x's. The x on the top and the bottom, can't cancel those. So there's your answer. Now, when would that ever happen? When the problem looks like this. Everybody write this down, please. 1 over x minus 1 plus 3 is less than 0. We can't do our little test here. We can't just go, what makes the bottom 0? What makes the top 0? Until we have got a common denominator and have added it all together. Then we can do our little, what makes the top 0, what makes the bottom 0 deal. Question?
Yeah, when is the instance where you can't multiply by an x or greater?
If you multiply both sides by an x, that screws up inequalities. But you may notice I haven't done that. I've only been multiplying within a fraction. Like I can multiply this by anything I want, as long as I do it on the top and the bottom. All right, so multiply by the other denominator. For this fraction here, the other denominator is a 1. So we multiply by 1 over 1. Do I really have to do that? No. Technically, multiplying by 1 over 1 doesn't do anything, so you don't have to do it. Multiply by the other denominator here. And the other denominator is x minus 1, so I'm going to multiply that here and here. Now, the next most common mistake is people think they have to multiply the denominators out. You don't. The denominators are just the same as each other, so you just write it. You don't like combine it. The common denominator was x minus 1, so you leave the bottom as x minus 1. How about the top? 1 times 1 is 1, plus that I got to multiply out 3x minus 3. Get how I did that? I had to distribute it out. So this test is going to be hard for some kids because of the algebra. Just the being careful about getting common denominators and stuff. Now I'm going to put the 1 and the negative 3 together. So I have 3x minus 2 over x minus 1. I was amazed at how many kids, when I asked them, like, what makes the top 0, they were like, there's nothing that makes the top 0. Yeah, there is. It's a fraction. What makes the bottom 0 is super easy. What makes the bottom 0? 1. But what makes the top 0? You have to go and write 3x minus 2 is going to equal 0 if I add 2 and I divide by 3. X equals 2/3 makes it 0. Let me prove it. I put in a 2/3 right here. The 3's would cancel, and then it would be 2 minus 2 on top. That makes it equal 0. All right, so bottom line, I have 2/3 for the top, and I have x equals 1 would make the bottom 0. Those are my two key numbers, and then I'm off to the races. Here's 2/3, here's 1. Circle them. See if those spots make it work. If you stick in a 1, does it make it less than 0? If you stick in a 2/3, does it make it less than 0? And then you test the intervals like something bigger than 1, something between these two. And I know those are weird. 2/3 and 1, that's like 0.6 and 1. Well, then use 0.75. It'll work. All you care is, does it come out positive or negative? And then try something like smaller than 2/3, like 0. Those are 3 good things to test. Test this, test this, test this. See where it comes out less than 0. Okay, I'm going to pause for a sec while everybody gives that a shot. Okay, so I was testing 2 now to see if it works, meaning if it is less than 0 when I put a 2 in. So now I'm going to put in a 2 and a 2, and I get a positive over a positive, which comes out positive. Is that less than 0? No. Cross it off. 0.75, I'm going to test it. I'm going to put it right here. 0.75 here and here. 3 times 0.75 is like 3/4. That comes out negative. I think. I'm just going to double check that. 3 times 0.75. It's like 3 sets of 75 cents. $1.50. 2.25. No, 2.25 minus 2. 2.25 minus 2 comes out positive. Sorry about that. That one comes out positive. And on the bottom, 0.75 minus 1, that's easy. That comes out negative. 75 cents minus $1. So negative. That one came out overall negative. That's less than 0. That's what I expected. So it shaded in right there. Who else shaded it in the middle? Cool. And last but not least, I'm checking 0. 0 gets put into my equation. It's getting so messy, I'm going to rewrite it. 3x minus 2 was on top, and x minus 1 was on the bottom, and I wanted it to be less than 0. And now I'm testing 0. That came out negative. That came out negative. Negative divided by negative comes out positive. Positives are not less than 0. Cross that off. There's my final answer. Between 2/3 and 1. If you like interval notation, it would look like that. Yes.
Of the test, will interval notation be applied?
I'm not going to predict what the test is going to say. If the problem said give interval notation, then you'd have to do that. If the problem doesn't say, then you get to leave it like this, because I think you have to have a number line in the first place. So no sense in making it interval unless they tell you to. All right. Now, last thing that gets people freaked out. This one isn't even a fraction, and yet tons of people freak out when this happens. Well, it's not that hard. It's what makes this equal 0 and what makes this equal 0. Put a number line. But, of course, this part's easy. X equals -1. But then they get to this part, and either they think that factors, and it doesn't. Proof, you'd have to use x plus 2 and x plus 2. If you used a minus, then you wouldn't get +4. You'd have to do this, and then that doesn't work. Because why? Because the outside and the inside makes +4x. That does not factor. Okay, well, the next step is, well, just set it equal to 0 and solve it. That's a good instinct. X squared plus 4 equals 0, and you solve it. X squared equals -4, and then you're all of a sudden with the square root of a negative, and that's impossible. There's no way to make that 0. So does that mean like there's like no solution to the problem? No. There's only one thing to check. That. You don't have to worry about anything for that. That doesn't ever equal 0. So the only things that matter are the things that make the top of this fraction 0. There is nothing on the bottom except a 1, so there's no way to make the bottom 0. So it's only -1. And then, does -1 itself work? Dice of Destiny, what should I call on? Row 5, person 3, Bridger, that's you. Does -1 work? I stick it in right here and right here. Does that make it come out greater than or equal to 0? Well, what's this part?
0,
Times anything is
0,
that greater or equal to 0?
equal to,
So, should I fill it in or not?
yeah.
Yeah, because it's equal to 0. It's greater than or equal to, and it is equal to. There we go. And now you test something bigger than -1, like 0. Put in a 0 here, put in a 0 here, and you get 1 times 4, which is 4, which is positive. Positive numbers are greater than 0. I tested 0 and it worked. Guessing it's not going to work here, but I'm going to double check. Putting in a -2 and a -2, but remember it gets squared right away. That's a negative times a positive, which is a negative. Are negatives bigger than 0? Nope, it doesn't work. You guys get the same thing as I did? All right, so here's where I would predict the most people are going to struggle. If the problem's like this, people will just happily factor it, and they'll find that there's 3 things, 2, -2, and -7. They'll put it on a number line. That kind will be easy. And if it says less than or equal to 0, one mistake I could see people making is with the -7. So why don't you try this one? It should take you like 15 seconds to set up, another minute to test. So if this is not in your happy place, we got to fix that. This is an R2 super easy question. Try it. I'm mildly concerned that people are going to screw up the -7. I won't tell you why. Hallie, what are the 3 important numbers? Yep. Now, Jack, why did I say that I was afraid people were going to screw up the -7?
Because it says less than or equal to, so you think you should fill it in, but it's on the bottom. So you should-
Exactly. People will see that and they think they fill in all the circles. Wrong. You think about each of them. 2 makes the top 0, so it makes it equal to 0. So 2 works. -2 makes the top 0, so it's equal to 0, so that works. But -7 makes the bottom 0, and that does not leave you any answer. There's nothing. It doesn't exist if the bottom is 0. Empty. So test them all. Don't just assume, oh, it's got an equal to sign. I should fill them all in. Nope. And then last, you have to test all the intervals. I'm going to test 3 real quick. 3, 3, 3. That's positive, positive, positive. And that makes positive. Positives are not less than 0. Didn't work. Now, I would predict that this will work because it's right next to a spot that didn't work. Usually that's how it goes. I'm going to test 0 now. I only get 1 negative, so it's negative. And then negatives are less than 0. It worked. I would predict that -5 would not work because right next door it worked. So I bet you -5 doesn't work. We'll find out. Negative, negative over positive. Negative, negative over positive. And that comes out positive. Positives are not less than 0. Cross that out. And last but not least is -8. That should make everything negative. And since it's negative, negative over negative, there's 3 negatives. That makes the whole thing negative. Those are less than 0. It works again. And there we go. There's my answer. If you like interval notation, you'd go like this. These work though. There we go. Brackets on the -2s because they're filled in. All right, now it's just a matter of you practicing, and then these were the hardest kind of questions that'll be on your test. The test is not tomorrow, but it's the next day. You've done the last thing. And this is the hardest kind, so if you're feeling good about them, then that's a really good sign. All right, so today's assignment, find it, open it, and we're going to skip problems 3, 6, and 9. So right off the bat, find problems 3, 6, and 9 and cross them out. Pausing for a second. Tons of kids last hour did have questions, and when I encouraged people to come up or I walked around and checked on them, tons of people did need help. So please ask me if you're struggling, because I was gone yesterday. I get that makes it harder. This is all a complete review of yesterday, but please ask for help, because heck, all we have is 1 day left to review, and then the test is the next day. So if you have issues with common denominators or testing intervals, please come up and ask me. If you do, we can probably fix it, and you'll probably be fine on the test. But if you leave today confused, you're in great danger of failing that test. It's our last test of the semester, other than the final, of course. All right, that's all I have for you for the video for today. Remember, you're skipping 3, 6, 9, and the extension problems at the end.